Mercy HFY, they begged the galaxy for help. Only Earth answered. Story engine? COUNCILREFUSAL narrated script. Full text target length 35. 50 minutes, the vote took 11 seconds. Tyravel counted. She had rehearsed her plea for 6 days. Practiced the harmonic shifts that would make her light pulses translate cleanly into galactic standard. Reduced 11 months of her species' slow suffocation into 40 words because 40 words was all the council allotted to species classified as declining status. 40 words. 11 months, 11 seconds. The chamber was a tiered ring of polished dark metal, seating 34 delegations in ascending rows. Tyravel stood at the center, below them all, her bioluminescent veins pulsing a flickering blue through her translucent amber carapace. Distress. She could not hide it. Vareth bioluminescence was involuntary, and every delegate in the room could see the panic bleeding through her thorax in cold, shivering light. She had said her 40 words. The voting displays activated. 34 screens, 1 per delegation. The first turned red. Denied. Then the second. Then the third. She watched them cascade. Red. 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 No pause. No hesitation. No delegate leaning forward to ask a question. 11 seconds and 34 screens glowed red in a perfect, unbroken wall. 34-0. The holographic projection of Vareth Sola, her homeworld, its atmosphere visibly choked with gray-green haze, flickered in the chamber's center and powered down. An administrative function. The petition was resolved. The system would be reclassified. The projection was no longer relevant. Tyravel's bioluminescence went dark. Not dim. Dark. Every vein, every pulse node, every flicker of amber gold that had marked her species' emotional language for 100,000 years. Gone. The Vareth equivalent of a scream so profound it produces no sound. She stood in a chamber of 34 species, and not one of them was looking at her. 3 hours and 41 minutes later, a communications technician on Earth's Deep Space Relay Station 14 picked up a broadband distress signal flagged in a language the translation matrix almost didn't recognize. Vareth, a species most humans had never heard of. The signal was unencrypted, undirected, and repeating. A final plea broadcast to anyone listening. The technician, a 26-year-old from Lagos named Adiezi Nwosu, flagged it, cross-referenced the Galactic Council's public vote record, and found the 34-0 result posted 11 minutes prior. Standard procedure said to log the signal and archive it. Adiezi stared at the screen for 90 seconds. Then she forwarded it to the Civilian Emergency Volunteer Corps. Within 6 hours, the CEVC's registration portal had received 4,200 applications. By hour 12, 8,100. By hour 18, when Yuki Tanaka arrived at the CEVC's coordination center in Yokohama, the counter read 11,342. Yuki stood in front of the operations board and studied the numbers. Not the volunteer count, the other numbers. The ones that mattered. Vareth Sola's atmospheric processors. 12 biomechanical units, ancient, built into mountain ranges over centuries. 9 still functioning. 3 failed. The remaining 9 losing efficiency at 1.2% per day in a cascade pattern. Each failure accelerating the next. Breathable air remaining at current decay rate, 16 days. Transit time from Earth's sector to Vareth Sola via pre-calculated FTL corridor, 14 days. Margin, 2 days. Yuki set down her data tablet. She did not give a speech. She did not rally anyone. She opened the fleet allocation screen and began assigning ships. 7 retrofitted cargo haulers, 2 mobile hospital platforms, 1 communications relay vessel. Total crew capacity, 2,400. No weapons. No military escort. No government mandate. No council authorization. She had buried her younger brother when she was 19. Tsunami. The relief ships had been delayed by 48 hours because of a jurisdictional dispute between 2 agencies over which department owned the response. She never found out which department won the argument. She only knew Kenji was already dead by the time the water pumps arrived. She typed the fleet designation into the system. CEVC Mercy Flotilla 7. Departure in 31 hours. Volunteers only. The counter hit 11,342. She stopped checking. 14 days is a long time to think about what you're flying into. The fleet jumped in 3 staged corridor hops. Earth sector to relay hub Gamma, Gamma to the outer spiral transit point to the Vareth system. Each jump took between 3 and 5 days. Between jumps, the ships drifted in real space while navigation cores recalculated the next corridor. Selim Teferi spent the downtime studying everything the CVC database had on Vareth atmospheric processors. The files were thin. The Vareth were a minor species in galactic terms. Low population, low economic output, no military, no trade leverage. Their atmospheric technology was old, biomechanical, half-grown, half-engineered over centuries. Nobody had published detailed technical schematics because nobody had needed to. Selim built his own models from what he could find. He was an atmospheric engineer by training. Grew up in Addis Ababa during the East African drought stabilization, watched his city's air processing grid fail and get rebuilt in real time when he was 14. That experience had put him in engineering school. This mission was the reason he'd stayed. The processors were elegant, he decided. Biological filtration membranes layered with mechanical compression systems, drawing toxins from the atmosphere and cycling breathable compounds back. The design was beautiful. The decay pattern was not. The cascade is too clean, he told Yuki during a briefing on day 9 of transit. Processor failure should be stochastic. Random timing, random sequence. This is sequential. 1 through 3 failed in order, 3 months apart. 4 and 5 are losing efficiency on the same curve. That's not entropy, that's a pattern. Yuki looked at him for a long moment. What does that mean? It means something started this. I won't know what until I get my hands on the hardware. The Vareth system was quiet in a way that felt wrong. No traffic, no comm chatter, no navigation beacons active. The Council had reclassified the system as non-recoverable within hours of the vote, and every automated routing network in the sector had updated accordingly. Ships in transit were redirected. Supply lines were severed. In 14 days, the Vareth system had become a dead zone on every star chart in the galaxy. Mercy Flotilla 7 dropped out of FTL at the system's edge, and the first thing the bridge crews saw was Vareth Sola itself, a world wrapped in gray-green haze so thick the surface was invisible. Atmospheric toxin readings hit the sensors immediately. Methane compounds, sulfur derivatives, particulate density off the charts. For most galactic species, the air down there was lethal within minutes. For humans, Deathworld natives who had evolved in an atmosphere full of oxygen, nitrogen, and a cocktail of trace gases that would kill a Vareth in seconds. It was merely unpleasant, irritating to the lungs. Manageable with basic filtration masks. Brutal, but livable. Yuki opened a channel to the planet's surface. Varath Sola, this is the Earth Civilian Emergency Volunteer Corps, Mercy Flotilla 7. We are unarmed. We are here to help. Please advise on landing coordinates for medical and engineering teams. Silence. 17 seconds of it. Then a voice. Translated through the comm system from Vareth harmonic language, but the emotional undertone bled through even in translation. Exhaustion. Suspicion. A faint tremor of something that might have been anger or might have been disbelief. This is Keseth, atmospheric technician, Northern Processing Hub. I don't know who you are or what you want, but the Council declared us dead 14 days ago. If you're here to strip resources from a dying world, you should know there's nothing left worth taking. Yuki didn't hesitate. We're here because you asked for help. Another silence. Longer this time. Nobody answered. Keseth said. We did. The surface of Vareth Sola was worse than the sensor readings suggested. Selim was on the first shuttle down, packed into a cargo bay with 6 other engineers and 40 crates of equipment they had spent the transit configuring for Vareth processor specs. The landing zone was a flat shelf of pale rock near the northern mountain range. The range that housed processors 1 through 4. The sky above was a solid ceiling of gray-green murk. Visibility, maybe 200 meters. The gravity was light. 0.35 G, which made Selim feel like he might float off the ground with each step. Keseth was waiting, smaller than Selim expected. Young for a Vareth. His carapace more translucent than the images in the database, with visible green-tinged bioluminescence running beneath the surface. A youth marker. His left forelimb was scarred. Chemical burns, maybe, or a mechanical injury. He stood apart from the small group of Vareth who had come to meet the shuttle, and his light pulses were rapid, erratic. Suspicion and anger, cycling fast. Your atmospheric readings. Salem said, stepping forward with his scanner extended. No preamble. He'd learned a long time ago that people in crisis don't want speeches. They want someone to start working. The processor decay. Is it accelerating faster than your models predicted? Keseth's light pulses stuttered. He hadn't expected a technical question. Yes. Processor 4 dropped another 3% overnight. Our model said it shouldn't hit critical for another 40 days. It'll hit critical in 12. Show me. Keseth stared at him. Or whatever the Verith equivalent of staring was, those compound eyes unreadable, and then turned and walked toward the mountain. Selim followed. No introductions, no diplomacy. Just the work. Behind them, Oren Bacher was already setting up the first triage station. Oren had seen bad situations. 38 years of trauma nursing across 4 continents had built a catalog of human suffering in his memory that he didn't access voluntarily. But the Verith were different. Their pain showed in light. The first patients arrived within an hour, carried, guided, or stumbling on their own. The atmospheric toxins were attacking their carapaces. Verith exoskeletons were translucent and delicate, designed for a clean, high-oxygen atmosphere. The sulfur compounds in the failing air were causing microfractures. Tiny cracks that spread across the carapace surface, leaking bioluminescent fluid, dimming their light. Some of the patients flickered weakly, their pulses irregular. Others were nearly dark, and the children, the Verith young, were smaller, their carapaces thinner, more vulnerable. Oren watched a Verith adult carry a child into the triage area, the child's light barely visible, a faint, greenish glow pulsing in stuttering intervals. He didn't have Verith-specific medical protocols. Nobody did. The CVC database had anatomy references and toxicology warnings, but no treatment guides. Because no one had ever treated a Verith for atmospheric poisoning before. There was no precedent because no one had ever come to help. Oren looked at the cracking carapace and thought about burns. Human burns. Polymer sealant bonding for third-degree thermal damage, a technique he'd used hundreds of times. The underlying principle was the same. Seal the breach, stop the fluid loss, protect the tissue beneath. He modified the polymer compound on the spot, adjusting pH and viscosity based on what the anatomy references said about Verith carapace chemistry. It took him 11 minutes to formulate. He tested it on a fragment of shed carapace first. It bonded clean. He applied the first treatment to the child, spread the sealant along the fracture lines with steady hands layer by layer, each application thinning as it reached the edges. The child flinched. Oren held still, waited, applied the next layer. 4 minutes later, the child's bioluminescence steadied. The green glow strengthened, then shifted, slowly, unevenly, toward gold, stable, warm, alive. The Verith adult standing beside the table made a sound that didn't translate. Oren didn't need a translation. He straightened up, cracked his neck, and called for the next patient. 7 hours into surface operations, the Council's communication arrived. Yuki read it on the bridge of the relay ship. A formal sanctions warning transmitted on Galactic Council letterhead with full diplomatic encryption. The language was precise and bloodless. Earth's unauthorized presence in a non-recoverable system constituted a violation of Galactic Resource Allocation Protocol 714. Continued operations would result in trade embargo, navigation blacklisting, and exclusion from shared infrastructure networks. Earth had 72 hours to withdraw. The message was CCA'd to 14 major trade partners. Yuki read it twice. She activated the fleet-wide comm channel. Every ship, every shuttle, every ground team heard what she said next. This is Yuki Tanaka, Fleet Coordinator. I've received a formal sanctions warning from the Galactic Council ordering us to leave the Verith system within 72 hours. I am acknowledging receipt of this communication. She paused. In the background, someone on the medical deck dropped a tray. A monitor beeped. Acknowledged, she said. All teams continue operations. Tanaka out. That was it. No defiant speech. No rousing declaration. The word acknowledged, carrying the entire weight of what she had just chosen. Economic ruin, political isolation, career destruction. In 2 syllables spoken like she was confirming a supply manifest. On the surface, Selim heard the broadcast through his earpiece while elbow-deep in the guts of Processor 4. He looked at Keseth, who had been working beside him for 6 hours straight and was beginning, grudgingly, almost imperceptibly, to stop treating him like an invader. Your fleet leader, Keseth said. His light pulses were cycling between blue and something Selim hadn't seen before. A pale, uncertain amber. She knows what this will cost your people. She knows. And she's staying. Salem pulled a corroded filtration membrane from the processor housing and held it up to the dim light. We all are. Keseth looked at the membrane, then at Salem. His bioluminescence shifted fully to amber for the first time since the humans had arrived. Not gold, not trust, not yet, but something adjacent, the beginning of something. And then Salem stopped. He was holding the membrane at an angle, and the light caught a pattern in the corrosion that shouldn't have been there. Microfractures. Not random, not organic. Machined. Precise lines cut into the filtration substrate at regular intervals. Invisible under normal inspection, but unmistakable under angled light. Keseth, he said, and his voice had changed. This membrane didn't fail. Someone cut it. Tiravel had not slept in 4 days. She had spent the first 2 days of the human presence watching from a distance, her bioluminescence muted, her conversations with Yuki Tanaka carefully neutral. Polite. Measured. She was the elder speaker. The closest thing the Verath consensus structure had to a leader. And she had spent 11 months begging 34 species for help. Every one of them had either ignored her or expressed sympathies that came with conditions so extractive they would have gutted what remained of Verath sovereignty. So when the humans arrived with no weapons and no conditions, Tiravel did not feel hope. She felt the specific dread of someone who knows that kindness without a price is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, because the price always reveals itself eventually. But then Salem's report reached her. Machined microfractures. Deliberate sabotage. 60 years old based on the corrosion dating. 60 years ago, the Thorani Trade Commission had negotiated a mineral transit agreement with the Galactic Council. The deal had collapsed when the Verath refused to grant exclusive corridor access. Tiravel remembered. She had been young, barely an adult, but she remembered the Thorani delegation leaving in silence. No threats, no anger, just silence. The planetary deep archive was carved into the bedrock beneath the Elder Hall. A cultural repository that predated spaceflight, expanded over millennia, never networked, never digitized. Physical records only, accessible only on site. Tiravel descended alone. She spent 9 hours in the archive. The records were organized by era, and she moved backward through time with increasing speed, pulling geological surveys, atmospheric reports, trade commission minutes, diplomatic correspondence. She found it in the 60-year-old files. A Thorani geological survey team had been granted temporary access to the northern mountain range, the range housing processors 1 through 4, as part of the trade negotiations. The survey lasted 18 days. The team filed a standard departure report and left. 14 months later, Processor 1 began losing efficiency. Tiravel stood in the archive's lowest chamber, surrounded by 60 years of records that drew a line as straight and deliberate as the microfractures in the membranes. The Thorani hadn't just refused to help the Verath. They had engineered the Verath's destruction, slowly, patiently, over 6 decades, to clear a trade corridor through a system that would be reclassified as unclaimed once its inhabitants were dead, and the council vote. 34-0, unanimous, 11 seconds. Had not been indifference. It had been the final step. Her bioluminescence went completely dark. Every vein, every node, every pulse of light that had flickered through her carapace since the day she was born. Gone. She stood in absolute darkness for a long time. The Verath word for this state translated roughly as the silence beneath silence. Then she climbed the stairs and went to find Yuki Tanaka. Yuki absorbed the information the way she absorbed everything. Quickly, completely, and with an expression that gave away nothing. They were in the fleet's mobile command module, a repurposed cargo container bolted to the surface near the northern processing hub. Tiravel stood across the planning table, her light still dark, the archive data projecting from a portable display between them. Salem was there. Oren was there, pulled from the triage station with polymer sealant still drying on his fingers. You're telling me, Yuki said, that the Thorani sabotaged your atmospheric processors 60 years ago and the council vote to abandon you was not a resource allocation decision. It was a cover-up. Tiravel's light flickered once. A single pulse of cold blue. I'm telling you that 34 species voted to let my people die so that one species could control a mineral trade route, and that this was planned before most of my people were born. Silence. Oren rubbed his eyes. Selim stared at the corrosion analysis displayed beside the archive documents. The lines matched. The timeline matched. The math was clean and horrible. This changes everything, Yuki said. This isn't a rescue mission anymore. This is a political crisis. If this evidence goes public, If this evidence goes public, Tiravel said, the Council will deny it. The Thorani will claim fabrication, and they will use whatever means necessary to destroy the archive before it can be verified independently. As if to underline her words, the communications relay ship pinged Yuki's tablet with a priority alert. She read it. Her expression finally changed. A flicker of something sharp and cold behind her eyes. Thorani Quarantine Enforcement Squadron, she said, 3 armed patrol cruisers, dispatched to our system under Council emergency provisions, ETA, 31 hours. Orders, blockade the planet, remove unauthorized personnel, and secure all planetary infrastructure pending Council review. Secure all planetary infrastructure. The archive was planetary infrastructure. They were coming to destroy the evidence. And they had guns. And Mercy Flotilla 7 had nothing. 22 hours. That was how long they had before the Thorani squadron arrived, and in those 22 hours, everything fell apart. Processor 4. The one Salem and Keseth had spent 3 days stabilizing, suffered a catastrophic membrane rupture at hour 6. Not a gradual decline. A sudden, violent failure that blew toxic compounds through the northern atmospheric grid and undid an estimated 40% of the repair progress across the entire network. Salem was standing 30 meters from the processor when it blew. The sound was a deep, wet crack, like a bone breaking inside a body. Green-gray gas vented from fissures in the mountain rock, and his filtration mask hit redline warnings within seconds. He stumbled back, eyes streaming, lungs burning even through the mask. Keseth grabbed his arm, physically grabbed it, 4 limbs locking around Salem's forearm, and pulled him clear. Salem registered, through the pain and the chemical haze, that this was the first time Keseth had touched him voluntarily. The membrane is gone, Keseth said. His bioluminescence was flickering so fast it was almost strobing. Blue-green, dark, blue-green, dark. Raw panic. That processor is dead. We can't repair it. We don't have the biological substrate to regrow the membrane, and your polymer compound won't work on a breach this size. Salem wiped chemical residue from his face and looked at the atmospheric readings on his wrist display. The numbers were cruel. Without Processor 4, the remaining 8 functional units couldn't maintain the atmospheric balance. Decay would accelerate. They had bought the Verith an estimated 12 additional days with their repairs. The processor failure had just taken 8 of those days back, 4 days. Maybe 5 if the other processors held. After that, the air would be unbreathable. He relayed the numbers to Yuki. He heard her silence on the other end. 3 seconds of nothing. And then her voice, steady as a surgical blade, understood. Keep working on the others. By every hour you can. On the medical side, Oren was seeing the effects. The toxic venting from Processor 4 had sent a surge of new patients to the triage stations. Carapace cracking accelerated. 2 elderly Verith went dark entirely. Not dead, but in a state of systemic shock that the humans had no framework to treat. Oren's improvised polymer sealant was holding on existing patients, but the incoming caseload was outpacing his supplies. He sent a message to the fleet. Polymer compound stocks at 31%. Current consumption rate, 6% per hour. I need either resupply or a miracle. Preferably both. The impossible choice arrived at hour 19. Yuki sat in the command module with the numbers laid out in front of her. Power reserves. Communications capacity. Atmospheric timeline. Thorani ETA. She had been staring at these numbers for an hour, rearranging them, looking for a configuration that didn't exist. The fleet's power reserves were at 34%. 14 days of FTL travel, followed by 5 days of continuous surface operations, had drained the cargo haulers far below comfortable margins. What remained had to be divided between 2 needs. Option 1, divert all remaining power to the atmospheric repair effort. Boost Salem's engineering team, run the remaining processors at maximum assisted efficiency, and try to stabilize the atmosphere before the air ran out. This would work. Maybe. Salem put the odds at 60/40ths, but it would require shutting down the communications relay ship, which meant no ability to broadcast the archive evidence. The Thorani would arrive, blockade the planet, destroy the archive, and the truth would die. Option 2, divert all remaining power to the communications relay ship and broadcast the archive evidence on every open channel in the galaxy. Full spectrum. Undeniable. Every species, every news network, every diplomatic frequency. The truth would be out permanently and irreversibly. But the atmospheric repair effort would lose its power support, and the remaining processors would continue their cascade failure without assistance. The Verith would have days, not weeks. Broadcast or repair. Truth or survival. She couldn't do both. Yuki stared at the numbers. She was aware, in a distant and clinical way, that this was the kind of decision that destroyed people. Not the decision itself. The knowledge that either choice meant someone died. Kenji's face surfaced in her memory, unbidden. Water, delayed pumps. Jurisdictional arguments while people drowned. She opened a channel to Tiravel. "I need to talk to you," she said. In person. Tiravel arrived at the command module 7 minutes later. Her bioluminescence had returned. Faintly, unevenly, a mottled amber that pulsed with no rhythm Yuki could read. Exhaustion? Maybe. Or something beyond the translation matrix's capacity. Yuki explained the choice. She laid out the numbers with the same precision she had used to organize the fleet, the same calm that had carried her through the sanctions warning and the processor failure and the Thorani squadron's approach. She did not editorialize. She did not recommend. She presented the math and waited. Tiravel listened. Her light shifted as Yuki spoke. Amber to blue to dark to amber again, cycling through emotions the humans could see but not fully decode. When Yuki finished, Tiravel was quiet for a long time. Her compound eyes reflected the glow of the displays. Somewhere outside, a generator hummed. A medic called for more polymer sealant. "My people," Tiravel said slowly, "have survived 11 months of dying. We have watched our sky turn poison. We have buried those who could not breathe. We have sent our pleas into a galaxy that voted, unanimously in 11 seconds, to let us disappear." Her bioluminescence brightened. Not gold, not amber. Something Yuki hadn't seen before. A deep, steady, luminous white. Clear. Resolved. "We can survive one more day. The truth cannot wait." Yuki held her gaze. "You understand what you're choosing. I am choosing what your species taught mine in 5 days that the galaxy failed to demonstrate in 60 years, that the right thing and the safe thing are rarely the same. Broadcast the evidence. Let the galaxy see what was done to us, and let my people show them that the Verith do not die quietly." Yuki nodded once. She activated the fleet comm. "All stations, this is Tanaka. Divert all available power reserves to the communications relay ship. Authorization Tanaka 7. Broadcast package uploading now. All engineering teams, you're on manual. Do what you can with what you have. Tanaka out." Salem heard the order in the guts of Processor 6, where he and Keseth had been working by the light of portable lamps for 9 straight hours. He felt the power grid shift beneath his hands. The subtle vibration of the assisted repair systems winding down as energy was redirected. He looked at Keseth. Keseth looked at him. Neither spoke. Salem picked up a hand tool and kept working. The broadcast hit the Galactic Communications Network at 1447 Standard Time. It was not subtle. The relay ship poured every watt of its remaining power into a full-spectrum transmission. Every diplomatic frequency, every commercial channel, every news network relay, every open communication node in 3 sectors. The archive data, geological surveys, atmospheric records, trade commission minutes, corrosion analysis, sabotage evidence. Streamed in raw, unedited, time-stamped formats with full cryptographic verification, Tiravel had recorded a message to accompany the data. She spoke in Verith harmonic language, untranslated, raw. And her bioluminescence was visible in the recording, the deep white glow pulsing with every word. Automatic translation subtitles rendered her words into 340 galactic languages simultaneously. The core of the message was simple. 60 years ago, the Thorani sabotaged our world. The Galactic Council voted to bury us with it. One species came. They came unarmed. They came to help. This is the truth. Do with it what your conscience demands. 40 minutes later, the transmission was the most referenced data packet in the Galactic Communications Network. Independent media organizations from 4 major species verified the cryptographic signatures within 90 minutes. And 3 hours after Tiravel pressed transmit, the Galactic Council's emergency session channel, unused in 17 years, activated. And 12 hours out from Verith Sola, the Thorani Quarantine Enforcement Squadron received the broadcast. Commander Revith Asul of the Thorani patrol cruiser Adamantine Resolve read the broadcast transcript and understood. with the clarity of a career military officer, that every order he had received in the last 31 hours was now evidence in what would become the most significant political scandal in galactic history. He had been told this was a quarantine enforcement action, standard procedure. Remove unauthorized human personnel, secure planetary infrastructure, file a report. Clean, simple, legal. He was now looking at 60 years of classified Thorani Trade Commission documents, verified and authenticated, streaming live on every newsfeed in 3 sectors. His orders to secure all planetary infrastructure, which he now understood meant destroy the archive before anyone sees it, were a matter of public record because the humans had included the Council's sanctions communication in their broadcast package. Riveth sat in his command chair for 4 minutes. He thought about his career. He thought about his family's position in the Thorani political hierarchy. He thought about the fact that every action he took in the next hour would be watched by an estimated 9 billion sentient beings across the galaxy. He ordered the squadron to hold position. Full stop. No advance. His executive officer protested. Riveth looked at her and said, "I will not be the officer who fired on a hospital ship to protect a genocide. Hold position." The squadron held. The first non-human vessel arrived at Verith Sola 16 hours after the broadcast. It was a Kairishi medical transport, a species that had voted no in the council chamber. They came without announcement, dropping out of FTL at the system's edge and transmitting a single message: "We should have come sooner. Tell us where to land." Then the Melosi, a heavy engineering barge repurposed for mining operations, carrying atmospheric processing equipment that dwarfed anything in the human fleet. They had stripped their own orbital refinery to bring it. Then the Tesseri, then the Onuth, then a species Yuki didn't even recognize, piloting a vessel that looked like it had been assembled in transit from spare parts and determination. By hour 20, 11 ships from 7 species were in orbit around Verith Sola. By hour 24, 19 ships from 12 species. Each one carrying engineers, doctors, supplies, or simply crew who wanted to help and didn't know how but came anyway. Selem was standing on the surface when the Melosi atmospheric equipment made planetfall. He watched it descend. A machine the size of a city block, settling onto the flat rock shelf with a precision that spoke of excellent engineering, and he laughed. He was exhausted, his lungs ached, his hands were cracked and chemical stained, and he laughed until Keseth asked if he was malfunctioning. "No," Selem said. "I just realized we don't have to do this alone anymore." Keseth's bioluminescence flickered. Ember. Warm. Steady. "You never were alone," Keseth said. "You just arrived before anyone else had the courage. The atmospheric processors were stabilized in 71 hours. It was not elegant. It was a brutal, grinding, multinational, multi-species engineering effort conducted in toxic air on a dying world with equipment from a dozen different technological traditions held together by improvisation and stubbornness. Selem coordinated the processor repairs, working alongside Keseth and a Melosi engineer named Dren, whose hydraulic limbs could reach parts of the processor housings that no other species could access. They rebuilt Processor 4's membrane using a hybrid of Verith biological substrate, human polymer compounds, and Melosi mineral composites that should not have worked together but did, because nobody told the engineers it was impossible before they tried it. Oren ran the medical operations until his polymer sealant supplies were replenished by the Kairishi transport. Then he kept running them, because the Verith patients knew him and trusted him and would not let anyone else near their children. The child. The first one he had treated, the small Verith whose carapace had been cracking from toxin exposure, had become his shadow. Following him between triage stations, light pulsing a steady, healthy green gold. Not speaking, not needing to, just present. On the morning of the 4th day after the broadcast, Selem activated the final repaired processor and watched the atmospheric readings on his display begin to shift. Toxin levels dropping, oxygen compounds rising, the cascade reversing. Slowly, unevenly, but reversing. He looked up. The sky above Verith Sola, which had been a solid ceiling of gray-green poison for as long as the current generation of Verith could remember, was thinning. Not blue. The Verith sky had never been blue, but clearing toward the natural amber gold that matched the bioluminescence of its inhabitants, as if the planet itself was healing in light. Councillor Dreth Mazoon did not attend the emergency session. His delegation issued a statement citing procedural concerns with the evidence verification process. Within 6 hours, 3 other council members who had been briefed on the Thorani Trade Commission's activities resigned. Within 48 hours, the Galactic Council convened a formal investigation, the first in its history initiated by public pressure rather than internal motion. The investigation's scope included the Verith sabotage, the 34-0 vote, and the quarantine enforcement order. Yuki received the notification of the investigation while packing equipment for the fleet's departure. She read it, nodded, and continued packing. She had never cared about the politics. She cared about the timeline, the breathable air, the patients, the processors. The politics were someone else's job. Tyreville came to see her off. The Elder Speaker's bioluminescence had returned fully. Not the muted, uncertain amber of the early days, but a deep, rich gold that pulsed with slow, steady rhythms. Calm, resolved, alive. "I must tell you something," Tyreville said. "The Verith Cultural Council met last night. We have added a new pattern to our bioluminescent language. This has not been done in 400 years. She extended one forelimb. Along its translucent surface, a new color pulsed. Distinct from gold, distinct from amber, distinct from the greens and blues of the Verith emotional spectrum, it was teal. A warm, steady, unmistakable teal. "We call it Theron Sol," Tyreville said. "It translates roughly as the ones who came. It is not an emotion. It is a memory. A permanent record, carried in our biology, of what your species did for ours." Yuki looked at the teal light pulsing on Tyreville's forelimb and felt something shift in her chest. She was not someone who cried. She had not cried when Kenji died. She had organized. She had worked. She had moved. "We just answered the call," she said. "No," Tyreville said. "You answered when no one else would. That is not the same thing. That is not the same thing at all." Oren was the last to leave. He sat on the cargo ramp of the final shuttle, boots resting on Verith Sola's pale rock, watching the sky. The gray-green haze had thinned enough to see the first stars in what the Verith told him had been over a year. The air was still sharp, still carried that faint chemical bite that made his eyes water if he breathed too deep. But it was clearing. Every hour, a little more. The child sat beside him. Small, translucent carapace glowing a steady, healthy gold, crisscrossed with the faint lines of polymer sealant that Oren had applied 5 days ago with hands that had spent 38 years learning to be steady under pressure. The child's bioluminescence pulsed slowly. Warm, rhythmic content, heartbeat made of light. Neither spoke. There was no translation matrix active between them, and even if there had been, Oren suspected that what they were doing right now didn't have words in any language. The sky was clearing. The stars were coming back. Somewhere above them, 11 ships from 7 species orbited a world that had been left for dead, and the galaxy was learning. Slowly, painfully, the way galaxies learn anything. That the silence after a plea for help is a choice, and that choices have witnesses. The child's light pulsed once. Teal, that new color, the one the Verith had created for the humans. Oren watched the sky and said nothing. There was nothing left to say. They'd asked the galaxy for help. Only Earth answered, but Earth's answer changed the question.